Hi, I'm Alan Walker, and this is my BookTube Newbie video where I answer 10 questions posed to all BookTube newbies like myself. I got them right here in these index cards, so I guess I'll go ahead and start with numerus unis. Boom! Why did you start a BookTube? I don't really know how anybody gives an answer to this question other than they want to talk about books. I want to talk about books. I want to find other people who share similar interests in books. None of my friends who really read the same kind of stuff as I do. So I'm hoping to find other people who share that interest and can maybe give me some recommendations. Also, I have really strong opinions and would like to talk about them. Boom, done. Numerous duo! What fun and unique thing do you think you can bring to BookTube? To be honest, I'm not super concerned with reinventing the wheel. Either you like my videos or you won't like them. I don't really want to pander. I really like ancient history. I'm a Latin teacher by day and a Greek and Roman history teacher. So ancient history, I'll probably make tons of references to that, as well as, hey, did you know the Latin root for that word is this? I also sometimes do funny voices, and I also have really strong opinions that may be unpopular. It's either I really liked it or I really didn't like it. So if that's your thing, you should definitely check it out. But otherwise, I really just want to talk about the books I like, give recommendations, get recommendations, and review books. Every now and then I might review a video game storyline because I play RPGs and they have stories as well. So who knows? We'll see. Numerous Trace, what are you most excited about this new channel? I think this question really kind of ties in with the first question. If you're not excited about reading or doing BookTube, I don't really know how you could do this. This takes a lot of time. So I'm excited to meet other people who share my interests. I'm also excited to learn more about this whole process. There's a lot that goes into making a video that I learned to my cost after I started, and it takes forever to really do anything when you're starting out and have no idea what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to making this process a little more streamlined, and also to meeting other people who may have differing opinions than I do. Really, I'm excited just to talk about books, but I think that's probably most people's answer. Numerous Quatuor. Why do you love reading? This is actually a pretty good question, though I think there's probably some cliche answers to this that I probably have as well. I think most people that like reading really like to escape to other worlds and see what authors can come up, these places that are different or like our own. And I really like to read books that are series, and I know other people that do that as well. You become really close to these characters and you identify with them and you cheer them on in their successes and try to root them forward during their failures. And I think there's something about that people really like, is following these people. They're not really your friends, but they might as well be as good as. In addition, reading is different than speaking face to face, because I'm really interested in writing styles and the way people write and why they choose this word over that word to describe something. And I think we do that a lot less when we talk than in writing. When we speak, we tend to speak off the cuff for the most part, I think. But I think in writing, you can sit there and you can fine tune and replace words and see, oh, the connotation of this word serves the situation better. And I think it's just a little hard to do in speaking. And so reading is just a way to see other people's creativity. I think being involved in things that are creative, or reading about things that are creative, or watching creative things, I think that kind of sparks the creativity to life inside you. And so creativity kind of begets more creativity. So reading makes you want to read more. If you're a writer, reading makes you want to write more. If you're a filmmaker, watching films make you want to make films. So I think that's probably my answer for that one. Boom. Numerous Quinque. What book or series got you into reading? I'm assuming that this question is mostly for people who didn't really start reading a lot until later, because when you start reading young, you don't really read series, especially if you're really young. I started reading dinosaur books and shark books. Those are the series that got me into reading. I love everything about dinosaurs and I loved everything about sharks, and I knew all of the facts about all the sharks and all the dinosaurs. However, what really got me into my reading frenzy in my teenage years was I played Dungeons and Dragons at the time, so it was the Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons book. I have one kind of sample book here. This is The Silent Blade. This is not the book that really got me into it. The book that really got me into the reading frenzy was called The Legacy by R.A. Salvatore, and it is one of his Dark Elf books starring Drizzt Do'Urden. I realize that some of you probably disagree with my pronunciation of Drizzt's name. It is spelled D-R-I-Z-Z-T, so maybe Drizzt or Drizzt, I've heard. I don't like those, so I'm going to call him Drizzt. I also call them the Drow Elves instead of the Drow Elves, and so if you don't like the way I pronounce that either, come at me. But I really liked these Drow books, and I really liked that they took place in the Drow city of Menzoberranzan, and there was a lot of political intrigue that really sucked me in, and that's probably where my love of books that have political intrigue kind of came from. And there's tons of fight scenes, which are awesome. There's always tons of fight scenes in R.A. Salvatore's books. And I really just devoured every single Forgotten Realms book that really there was until I kind of branched out to other fantasy series. I read the Forgotten Realms books before I ever read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then the other more kind of mainstream popular fantasy series. So that's really what sent me into the frenzy. Number 6. What questions would you ask your favorite booktuber? I think a lot of the questions that people say they would ask their booktubers is, how do you guys read so much? I watch y'all's April to be read, and there's 432 books that you're planning on reading in the month of April. How? How? Do you just flip pages and understood it? I don't know how you do that. I'm kind of a fast reader, but I just can't do it. So I envy that. So that's awesome. So that's probably what I would ask them. I would also probably ask them if it is ever tiring, if they ever get tired of doing this, and if they ever read books that they don't want to talk about. So that's probably it. Numero septem. What challenges about this BookTube channel do you think will be the hardest to overcome? That is easy. Everything involving tech. I do not know a ton about technology, and it frustrates me when it doesn't work properly. So I think learning how to set up tech and lighting and framing and especially video editing is probably the most challenging thing to overcome. I can set a camera up and just sit there and talk about books. That's fine. But the problem is in the editing process, if you don't know anything about video editing, even if you're watching tutorials, it's so hard. There is such a steep learning curve. As I learned to my cost when I edited my first video. It took 15 hours. So if you can't learn how to do that quickly, there's no way you can come out with more than one video a month. So definitely anything involving technology will be the hardest challenge to overcome. Boom. Numerus octo. When did you start reading? Well, everyone who does something that they really enjoy or have been doing for a long time, you always hear people being like, oh, well, I've been dancing since I could walk. Really, ever since I was born, I was dancing. Or anytime, if you've ever watched the singing shows, they're always like, oh, she's just been singing since she could talk. Her first words, she just sang the national anthem as her first words. And I don't want to do that, but I really have been reading since I was 3. I learned my letters on Wheel of Fortune, watching it with my grandma, and then I read, again, dinosaur books and shark books. So I was reading a ton when I was little. There weren't super complex books, but in my pre-K classes, if we took a book home and read it and brought it back the next day, we got a pixie stick or a piece of candy and stuff. And man, I must have been sugar overloaded because of all the books that I was bringing back. Take one, read it, bring it back. Take one, read it, bring it back. Now, to be fair, I was the last person in my class to learn how to tie my shoes, so that came much, much later, and not until my mom said I couldn't play Nintendo again until I sat there and did it, and it took me 2.5 hours, and I finally was able to make the bow and the bunny and whatever. But guess what? Plot twist. I don't wear shoes that have laces anymore, so boom. Numerous noem. Where do you read? I think a better question is, where don't I read? I tend to not have huge chunks of time, so I kind of bring my book wherever I go and just kind of read when I have some downtime. I will read in bed, which is frustrating because Anyone who's ever read in bed knows what it's like to be reading and then you get tired and the book falls on you and you wake up, and rather than being smart and putting your book away, no, you're like, okay, that jolted me awake, I can probably read another page. You can't. And even if you do, you don't remember it in the morning. So once the book falls, just put it away. I will read outside on my porch, provided there aren't lizards everywhere, which there tend to be during the summer, which I dislike strongly. And when I was in high school, I used to read at stoplights when I was driving. You should not read while the motor vehicle is in operation. Just don't. Just wait till you get wherever you're going. And finally, numerus decem. What kind of books do you read? Definitely mostly fiction, though I do read some nonfiction. In fiction, fantasy is my go-to genre, and any subsection of that is really military fantasy. I really enjoy military fantasies like Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen or Glenn Cook's Black Company. There's another book series by Django Wexler. I forget what the series is called, but the first book is 1,000 Names. It's about it's like the Napoleonic Wars with magic. So those are really good also. I like historical fiction. There's a series about Richard Sharp by Bernard Cornwell, about a soldier in the Napoleonic Wars. I also like Terry Pratchett, which is really kind of hard to define. It is fantasy, but it's also mystery and comedy. If you've read Pratchett, you know it, and if you haven't, then you should read Terry Pratchett. I don't really read D&D, Forgotten Realms books anymore. I was never super into Dragonlance. Of nonfiction, I will read anything that is about ancient Greece or Rome. Pretty much anything. Again, that is my day job, teaching Latin and Greek and Roman history, and I love me some Romans and, to a lesser extent, the ancient Greeks. But I really like ancient warfare, so I'll read lots of things about military formations, ancient weaponry. So anyway, that is my BookTube Newbie video. I hope you liked it. If you did, feel free to say something in the comments. And please, if you have any suggestions within the genres that I like fantasy, military fantasy, mercenary companies, I like things like that. Or if you've read a really good book about ancient warfare, you should suggest that as well. If you have any really good books that you've read that are in the fantasy genre, but are kind of like not in the subgenre that I mentioned, recommend those as well. I'm always looking for new recommendations for books to add to my already too big TBR pile. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys.